Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this community conversation about the great apostrophe debate. Actually, it's about the S debate. But whatever it has been the cause of Parker Westbrook for 30 years. And all of us who, during that particular time frame, have been co-opted by Parker on this issue, come down strongly on the spelling of ARKANSAS apostrophe S. But we're glad to have you here to discuss this. Let me say a little bit. First of all, I'm very proud to have the House Majority Leader, the person that Parker co-opted into introducing the House resolution, and one of the bright young stars of the legislature, good guy, warrior Steve Harrelson here, Texarkana. And of course, the Arkansas's premier historic preservationist on every state, national, international historic preservation group around. I must tell you one story on Parker, and then I'm going to sit down and get this debate. Parker, after Governor David Pryor left to go to the Senate, Lieutenant Governor Joe Purcell assumed the governorship. And Parker, who was retiring again for the fourth time, agreed to stay with Governor Purcell during that week of 10 days of interim before Governor Clinton came in. So Governor Purcell was governor and Parker was running the office. During that particular time, there was an ice storm. And the chicken houses were falling down and the power lines were down. And Parker calls Governor Purcell and says, "Governor, we have a problem. We have ice everywhere. We can't get power to the chicken farmers. We have a crisis of enormous proportion." And the governor said, "Parker, what do you think we should do about it?" And Parker said, "We should call out the National Guard." At which point Governor Purcell says, "Okay, Parker, call out the National Guard." And Parker says, "Damn it, Governor, I'm not the governor. I can't call out the blanking guard. You've got to call out the guard." Anyway, these two guys have come together that has raised this issue to a national proportion. The great apostrophe debate. Representative Steve Harrelson, the legendary Parker Westbrook. Thank you all.
Well, I want to expand on Mr. Rutherford's introductions. I also see my longtime federal judge friend, Judge Bill Wilson, who is a great friend of mine. He was also a great friend of my historian sister. They collaborated on a lot of things. And then also the distinguished Attorney General of Arkansas, who possibly helped get me into this situation. Because I mentioned to him in his campaign, which I supported thoroughly, I am a yellow dog Democrat, and I admit that right up front. In any event, he had incorporated in 5 possessive cases in one of his excellent folders on his campaign last fall. So I thought, Linda, that was rather wonderful that Dustin put in 5 possessive cases on the subject of Arkansas's possessive case. Bobby Roberts and my friend Mitchell, who is chairperson at this time of the Historic Arkansas Museum, on which I have been a member for 32 years and missed probably only 2 or 3 meetings, plus being on 2 federal commissions from the President and the Secretary of Interior, Bruce Madden. Never missed a meeting on either one of those in 8 years. So in any event, I was going to use it the other evening, this thought that Arkansas runs deep in me. Someone suggested that I use Eva Ware Barnett's song, which is Arkansas's anthem, but I thought, well, I would get a little more modern and then use Arkansas, You Won Deep in Me. Steve had driven David and Barbara Pryor and me to Hot Springs Tuesday night, and I got so carried away with Arkansas's possessive case that I never got around to singing part of Arkansas, You Run Deep in Me. How long do we have now, Steve?
We've got, well, some of these people have to get back to
Well, I
work,
know.
so probably about an hour for us. But you probably need to go and give Steve a little comment, because he's got to go back to legend.
Well, the fun of all of this is in the Nashville High School, and some of you may have heard me tell this story, we had a teacher who had been there for 43 years teaching Latin. Her name was Jessie Bohannon Leslie, and her husband was a no-good lawyer in Nashville, Arkansas. But in any event, about 6 or 7 of us boys did not want to take Latin from Jessie Bohannon Leslie, so we took shorthand to get enough credits to get out of high school on grade shorthand. Well, so in any event, I don't want to tell you necessarily the year, but since my full age has been exposed by being an old family friend of Steve Harrelson, I graduated from high school in 1943 at 17 years of age, and that was during the war. And so in any event, I had hung around the courthouse in Nashville all of my life because my cousin, Dale Floyd, was the circuit clerk of Howard County, Arkansas. And so I had learned to type also. So I would go down to the courthouse every afternoon at 14 years of age and record deeds and mortgages. We didn't even have the electric typewriter, but I did all of that, and my cousin went to his farm out on the Saline River. And I hate to mention it, Judge, and Mr. General, but in any event, if the statute of limitations has not expired, I think we ought to handle me carefully because I signed my cousin's name to deeds and papers that had been left for recordation, and so it was just as though I was the circuit clerk at 14 years of age. So in any event, I got interested in sitting in the courtroom, and at that time I also met Congressman Boyd Tackett, who at that time was a prosecuting attorney before he went into the military. And so in any event, knowing that I did as well as knew how to type, I knew how to write grade shorthand pretty rapidly if it was necessary. Sitting in the courtroom, and incidentally for all of you lawyers here, in every trial that we had in the Ninth Judicial Circuit of Arkansas, which was in southwest Arkansas, of course, the opposing counsel would have to enter into an agreement, Dustin and Bill, because they didn't want the record contested. The opposing counsel will not question the integrity of the record because of the minority of the court reporter. So in any event, that got me on into politics because Boyd Tackett was going to run as one of the GI revolt. Sidney McMath was a longtime friend of his, and he was running for Congress in 1948. And I was, by that time, up in Missouri teaching speed writing shorthand. And so he said, if wish to gamble my career or something like that, come home, we go to Washington. We were doing telegraphs at that time instead of email. In any event, certainly I went home and worked in Boyd Tackett's campaign and went to Washington with him. And of course, he was maybe considering running for governor in 1952. And based upon that rumor, Steve and I talked about this the other evening with David Pryor. Because of that, redistricting in Arkansas as a result of the 50 census was very easy. We lost one member, and just on the rumor that Boyd Tackett was going to run for governor, they dissolved his district between Judge Trimble and Orrin Harris. But also, as a part of all of that, all of my life I have read the former oldest newspaper west of the Mississippi River. When I was in the 9th and 10th grades, I delivered at 5 o'clock in the morning the Arkansas Gazette. So I learned to read possibly from the Arkansas Gazette rather than Mrs. Bozeman, my first school teacher. In any event, we went to Washington, and naturally I was very interested in Arkansas history already. As Judge Wilson knows, I had been taught by my brilliant sister a lot of Arkansas history. All of us, all of our family, were interested in Arkansas history and heritage and whatever. So this apostrophe S is nothing new with me. In fact, it has probably become an obsession about 20 years ago. And that's where I found, Skip, the earliest reference to my concern with the apostrophe S was in something that I had said 25 years ago, Arkansas's apostrophe S. But let me clarify right now that it is not an apostrophe war. It has nothing to do really with the apostrophe, and if you can see this, early on, as the explorers, Henry de Tonti, might be the first traveler to Arkansas, at least 1681, he was running into all of these people up north of the Arkansas River as the Arkansas ran into the Mississippi. And apparently they were Paw Indians. Well, somewhere along there, about the time Arkansas became a territory, they had added an S on the word, apparently to give the a broader sound, recognizing that the French apparently do not have a W in their alphabet. So this was not broad enough. It should have sounded like Washita, Omaha, Utah. They really had a problem adapting this Native American word to the pronunciation of actually the French. The word Kansas is interpreted by English people, and the group of Indians there were known as K-A-N-C-E-S, and that was anglicized and became the name of Kansas. But then we had senators from Arkansas, Chester Ashley from Little Rock, I think he might have been from Lakeport, and then Ambrose Sevier from Little Rock. And they went to the Congress as Arkansas's early senators, and Ashley, being from New England, introduced himself as being from Arkansas. Well, Ambrose Sevier had come from Tennessee, and he introduced himself as the senator from Arkansas. And so in any event, people could not decide, and then they got confused by having this S on there, and what do you do with the S? So in any event, the thing that occurred there is that it is not a battle of the apostrophes. That shows that some of our press people don't understand properly even the history of the word itself. And so since that S was added only to give the A broader sound, as in Kensaw, Bayou, which is down in South Arkansas, and then let's see, well, Arkansas, they didn't know exactly what to do with a silent S. So some of the people involved in the press, one way or another, at the Gazette certainly did not do this. They had the proper understanding of the history of Arkansas, and Mr. William E. Woodruff apparently was quoted somewhere on there as saying that it is going to be pronounced Arkansas, whether you like it or not. So it was no problem to William E. Woodruff. So that was fine with the Gazette, and it went on for years and years and years. The S apostrophe S. But then, as we know, and incidentally, if some of you are not aware of it, I think Francis is, as a great historian. The last issue of the Arkansas Gazette printed an insertion for their Sunday paper that had a column called People and Events. And there I was in photo from the Historic Arkansas Museum with a wonderful story by Ellen Kreth, who was the granddaughter of Orville Faubus. And I did not know at the time that she was the daughter of Orville Faubus. And unfortunately, I said several things about her grandfather that I probably should not have said, because I lost a job with a congressman from Arkansas, not Boyd Tackett. We got along fine, because I didn't support Orville Faubus one year, and he said it could embarrass him. Now that he is gone, I will also say, and let you interpret it, he said, I've known for some time that you and I don't read the Bible the same way. That's Eastern Arkansas vernacular. We're about 3 states in Arkansas. We ought to be divided into 3 states, politically and ideologically and whatever. So in any event, that insertion never got circulated, because on Friday, the Arkansas Gazette played out. They were bought by another statewide paper. And so their policy was just stick an apostrophe. We were taught in some schools that you put an apostrophe on any word that ends with an S. Do you remember that in some school somewhere? Well, that simply doesn't work in this case, because in 1881, and in fact, let me mention that we are celebrating the birth of a child, or the legitimacy of a child today, after 126 years of Mother Arkansas's laboring, because of the fact that some people have never studied the etymology, the evolution of the word Arkansas, where in 1881, Mr. Attorney General, the legislature met in the spring of 1881, after having studied for a year, headed by Uriah M. Rose, famous Arkansawan. How do you like that? Like Washita'n, Omaha'n, Oklahoma'n, Minnesotan. It goes on and on. If anybody is wondering, Judge, what we call ourselves, we actually are Arkansans. like Omaha uns, and get over it because they, because the legislature said
That's for next session, you can introduce that bill.
henceforth and hereafter, the word shall be pronounced Arkansas. The final S shall be considered silent, and the pronunciation shall be Arkansas with the final S silent. So there we are. It is not a battle of the apostrophes. It is a battle of the definition of the word in that resolution of 1881 of the General Assembly, when they said it is pronounced Arkansas and the final S shall be considered silent. That has been agreed on 126 years ago, we might say today. And Steve may mention the status of his general amendment. What we're doing is amending the resolution of 1881 when we hope to bring some authenticity, legitimacy to the fact that the possessive case is apostrophe S. And let me, I will add another S back there. So this is absolutely correct because this letter is silent and this one is after the apostrophe. So the apostrophe produces nothing. It is behind and modifying a silent letter. So you have to add this extra S on there to get Arkansas's true and rightful possessive case. Mr. Harrelson. He will.
Thank you, Parker. I'm Steve Harrelson. I'm the Democrat from Texarkana who started all this. And this has been quite a couple of weeks for me here. This started out as basically a tribute to Parker. We had been wanting to do something for a long time for Parker, merely a resolution or a gesture, because at least in my quarters down in southwest Arkansas, he's known as the historian of Arkansas. And so we've always been wanting to do something to tribute him for all of his hard work. A few years ago, we had talked about, well, instead of doing something like this, why don't we just file a bill or a resolution to further his cause? Because he's exactly right. The last 20 years of his life has been a crusade on the possessive spelling of our state. So, not realizing whatsoever what this would do, we decided to go ahead and do that. So I filed the bill, or actually resolution, with a few other co-sponsors and with the agreement that Senator Jim Hill would carry it over in the Senate, which he's now doing. Now, let me go back and kind of tie all this together, because you heard a lot about the Howard County Courthouse back in the 40s. But my grandfather was Boyd Tackett, and Granddaddy gave Parker his first job in Arkansas politics back in 1948. And like he said, my grandfather was a two-term congressman, and his district was dissolved in 1952. That's back when we had 7 congressmen. And of course, you can see how our population has dwindled since then, or not dwindled, but everybody else has just caught up. So when that happened, he decided to run for governor, which was rumored he would do anyway. And so that is the history between Parker's family and my family, and that's why I call him my old family friend. and part of that, I felt somewhat obligated to do this for Parker because of all of the stuff that he has done, and also because of the impact that he's had on me, not only personally, but through other people. The first hand I had in a political race was Nate Coulter's 1993 judge. Let's see, that was a special election for lieutenant governor. I believe Huckabee beat him by a few votes per precinct. Anyway, I was a high school guy and trying to help him along, write letters for him and things, and I noticed that he had this apostrophe S at the end of Arkansas. I said, Judge, I said, Nate, what is this? And he said, well, this goes back a long way, and it's right, and Parker Westbrook taught me. So I learned that in 1993, and then a few years later, when I was serving as Vic Snyder's campaign manager in 2000, he did the same thing. Ever since then, I've noticed that lots of politicians, lots of businessmen, lots of judges. George Rose Smith was a huge proponent of this this cause. A couple other judges that are remain silent right now, and also our Attorney General Dustin McDaniel. And I noticed when I was also, before the Gazette went its way, that the Gazette was a proponent of this cause. So that's basically where I came from with this, and decided to go ahead and drop it in the hopper about 2 weeks ago. And I knew it was going to be a big deal when I'm sitting here, okay, I've got my bill on electronic recording, my bill on methane production, several things I've been working on a lot, and I dropped those in. And I was headed down to my committee meeting about 45 seconds after I dropped this, and got stopped by a KARK reporter. And I said, okay, well, good. They want to talk about my methane bill. Well, ever since then, my phone has been ringing off the hook about the possessive spelling of Arkansas. And to make this personal, I got a call from my former 86-year-old neighbor who since moved to South Carolina to report that I was on the front page of her local paper. So we've had a lot of fun with it, you know, and I want to talk a little bit about the merits of the bill a little bit, because I think I'm probably obligated to do that. But this comes down to basically two camps who, you know, ridiculed me and criticized me, and a lot of it was probably well deserved. But number one, a lot of people said, "Hey, this is a waste of time," and you know, there probably is some merit to that. We're over here trying to fix schools in the Lakeview case, Dustin, and several other things, and you know, my response to that is, I think this is a resolution. It doesn't have any legal effect. This is something that we do in the morning hour. We consider dozens of them every day, every week. Matter of fact, last week we congratulated the person who put the first piece of bread through the bread slicer. We congratulate people who've managed to stay together and married for an extended period of time. We spent some time congratulating local golfers and state champs in girls basketball. So, you know, to me, at least this has some historical significance, because a lot of people don't think it's important, but it's important to me. It goes back to our culture and our identity as a history and as a people. So, to me, I believe it does have some sort of merit. And I've accepted a lot of that criticism, and you know, that's fine. It's as if they believe that the only thing I'm doing over here is proofreading everybody else's legislation. But on the other hand, there are some people who just think I'm wrong. And in Sunday school, the week after I filed this, we had our little daily devotional. My Sunday school teacher wanted to point out to me, look, here it is, Jesus, J-E-S-U-S apostrophe. There is no F on the end of that. So I had to get into the argument with her about, well, Arkansas ends in a silent S. And so I think that's where the merits of the entire bill, or resolution, excuse me, stands, is that Arkansas ends in a silent S. The apostrophe does not change the pronunciation of our state. The final S is going to remain silent. Therefore, if you're going to have the sibilant, that sibilant S sound at the end of the possessive, you have to add the extra S at the end. And to me, it should be a no-brainer. But there has been a lot of controversy over it. Now, I can't let this go by, because I was reading the Democrat Gazette editorial page this morning, and they let somebody slide one by them. In the second paragraph, they mentioned the top executive officer of Arkansas's capital city. Arkansas's apostrophe S. So they let one get by them, and I can understand that people are saying, how in the world are y'all debating over apostrophes? And I told them the same thing, Parker. I said, well, number one, this is not all we're doing. This took me a total of about 4 minutes of legislative time to discuss this. And secondly, we're not debating over apostrophes. We're debating at S's. So it's been a fun couple of weeks. But to me, if we're going to debate things in the morning hour, and things that have no legal effect, by the way, this will not change letterhead on state documents, and we're not going to have mandates to go out and reshuffle all of our state documents. If we're going to debate things in the morning hour, I think it's practical and it's good to debate our history and identity as a people and our history. So I find nothing wrong with it. I would do it again for Parker because not only am I obligated to him as my old family friend, but he's right.
Steve, I think you ought to mention one thing about your granddaddy before we attack it. On the floor of the U.S. House in 1948, he delivered a stem winding speech against daylight savings time. Parker probably wrote it. Beautiful speech, and it's right.
I can tell you, if he were alive today, he would be cussing the computers right now because my clocks would not change by themselves this time.
Now, before we get into questions, one thing, you have a little exercise here on your desk, a little quiz here for everyone to fill out. Please leave them when you leave. And we're going, for those of you that responded by email, we'll calculate the results and give you the correct possessive spelling of Des Moines and everything else that you're interested in.
Skip, let me lobby them a little bit because I think I need to do this to give them some authority to hang their hat on here. The New York Times agrees with us. The Wall Street Journal agrees with us. The Bible of all punctuation, Strunk and White's style manual agrees with us. So I think that is the end-all be-all. I talked to one of my old law professors, who's also doubles as the librarian over at law school. I told her, well, the Associated Press does not agree. She said, pish, the Associated Press is newspaper style. Don't pay any attention.
Well, and one little codicil to that thought is the joke is on the statewide paper. It is not a battle over the apostrophe, as I may have said. Their apostrophe is wonderful. The battle is over the definition for 126 years of the word silent. A final S shall be considered silent.
Now, I want y'all to remember that I said nothing about the statewide paper. I don't want to be the target.
Well, and then also we learned from the statewide paper that one of my friends there said, well, he has brought this to the attention of the Democrat many times. No, change that to many, many, many times.
Questions for Steve or
Oh, Dr. Bruce.
The Arkansas River flows through Kansas, and they call it the Arkansas River. So should they spell it S apostrophe only in that state?
Well, I'm going to say that it would be all right because, see, Kansas does end with a sibilant sound. And the English interpreted that group of Indians and their language, the Kansas Indians. I've been informed that they were actually very closely related to the Pawpaws, but apparently the English in 1861, when Kansas became a state, call it Kansas, and I have no problem with it. So if it's the Arkansas's river, that's wonderful. That's their beautiful river. Down here, though, we should certainly use an apostrophe.
So we have two
Arkansas's beautiful river. Well, you would have one at a time. One in Kansas and one here.
now go over the Arkansasan.
Oh, well, yeah, well, now see.
He's on his own this one.
Well, here is the thing. In that resolution of 1881, they said that the word should be pronounced Arkansas with a final S silent. And of course, the other state is Arkansas. But when you get around to saying who we are, to me, we're never, that might be the next General Assembly resolution for Steve, is to tell us what we're called. Because, see, we turn right around and say in the 81 resolution that the word shall be pronounced Arkansas, but the final S shall be silent, and not Arkansas. But we turn right around, see, and call ourselves Arkansans. So get ready. We need to, in the next legislature, if the Attorney General will give us some assistance in this matter, we can even straighten out our adjectival noun, Francis. I believe it would be that we are Arkansans. Do you know what the name of the yearbook is at Washita College? Washingtonian. They're an educational institution, like AEPN, getting state funds and everything. They cannot get with us on this apostrophe S thing. So the yearbook is titled Washingtonian, as though you're from Houstonian, Stocktonian, Bostonian. You should be a Washingtonian.
It's a Baptist.
So does that mean you're a Texas canon?
Well, yeah. You would be. There is a tradition of how we make ourselves into, shall we say, adjectival nouns.
Parker, I want you to know in your honor that we've had a great debate at the school as different people have decided how to spell the possessive of Arkansas. But in your honor, Dr. Bruce and I have decreed that our style book shall be ARKANSAS apostrophe S. So from this point on, if you see anything coming out of the Clinton School in press releases or anything that doesn't have that, it is a punctuation error.
Okay. Well, incidentally, I called it to the president's attention.
I'm sure.
In 1993, at the same time I called it to the attention of Richard Davies of Parks and Tourism. And he said, why hasn't somebody told me this? And I said, well, Richard, the History Commission is in your department. So in any event, but as Skip is mentioning, most of the officials of Arkansas are now using it because they have been, taught on the subject, Dr. Bruce, as we might describe it if we were here. Dustin McDaniel adopted it. Governor Beebe adopted it. Charlie Daniel had adopted it 10 years ago and even put it in the name of his book when he published the first reports of the commissioners of land. So in any event, a lot of people are doing it. And also Department of Arkansas History, Arkansas Historical Association, University of Arkansas Press, on and on and on. People are using it. Even Cook's Jeep down here. And if you notice on Channel 7, Simmons Bank is saying Arkansas's Bank. So it is getting wider spread.
Well, I promised I would not, promise somebody that I would not show my ignorance when I came down here, but I'm either going to break that promise or not, but I'm going to ask my question. And I can't cite you chapter and verse on this, but I would say that your Sunday school member is wrong, and that it should be JESUS apostrophe S, Jesus's. And as I sit here and I should try to think on that, I can only remember my senior English teacher in high school drawing a distinction between proper nouns with the sibilant S pronounced at the end and the plural of non-proper nouns. For example, if you said it's the kids' toy. These are the kids' toys. It would be KIDS apostrophe without another S, because that's plural, and you have the. But if it's a singular or first or last name ending in S, it should be apostrophe S. Now I'm solidly in the camp that it should be Arkansas apostrophe S. But
Well,
not
frankly, I
necessarily,
agree
not
with you.
necessarily because of the silent,
Because, see, Jesus is a very short word, almost one syllable word. Texas
Texas,
is
S
almost
apostrophe
one
S.
solid word.
Texas
So
S
therefore,
apostrophe.
to give it the possessive sound, in my view, I agree with you. You need to add another S to give it that sounding of the possessive.
But this, I think, is the
River.
main area where stuff like the Associated Press and various other style books. I know, I mean, while I was still under the influence of my high school English teacher and my college English professors, I got a job at a news bureau where I had to learn Associated Press style, which I interpreted as basically telling me to misspell half of the things that ended in S or involved apostrophes that I'd struggled for several years to master.
Well,
My style book, by the way, says that you can use the apostrophe only if it is an ancient name, like Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's my style book uses Jesus as an example.
Well, and that is all the other paper, or the paper the other day, the statewide paper, mentioned Keats and, poets. But there is one syllable there, Keats, and whatever.
What if you were saying the Joneses' car?
Well,
Jonses to pluralize Joneses, and then I think you can use just the S, just the apostrophe. I think it really should be S apostrophe S.
well, Jones's car would be Jones apostrophe S.
But you gotta pluralize
You
it.
get more than one Jones.
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to y'all. I think it's the best community conversation I've seen in a long time.
Well, I'll tell you what really got me onto this years ago is there was a big renovation at the federal courthouse, Judge Wilson, before your day. In fact, it was in the bankruptcy area, and of course, it was not people trained in the law or anything else that were doing the final paint jobs on the doors, but all of the doors came away with ATTORNEY apostrophe S, attorney's entrance. And,
A little wrong.
apostrophe S to, one attorney. Which attorney is supposed to be one attorney? It was clearly supposed to be,
Well, and you go to county fairs where they paint these little things for your door. The Joneses put on your mailbox. They think by putting the apostrophe
they
on there,
pluralize
you're representing the entire family.
Right.
And you're not. That is not plural.
Remember that language is dynamic.
I beg your pardon?
Remember that language is dynamic.
Okay, well, that's right. Well,
It
now,
does change.
What we might do, the Senate hasn't had their morning hour yet, but if they had, we should sing Happy Birthday to Mother Arkansas. That hopefully this afternoon.
Are they voting
The
today?
Senate has passed this out of their state agencies committee, and it's on today's calendar. Whether they will vote on it, I don't know. We've had a small little rift here in the past couple of days where Senate is not voting on House bills. The House is not voting on Senate bills. I'm hopefully
Parker, no, your resolution could be held hostage.
But the chairman of the committee told me that it has received a due pass in the Senate committee, and Senator Hill said he would bring it up as soon as it was. In fact, I understand that it is on the calendar today.
But, ladies and gentlemen, I know that, let's give a big hand to Steve Harrelson. Steve has to go back and shepherd Parker's bill through the Senate. And Parker will stay here for the next 3 or 4 hours. And about anything you would like to do, Parker. So thank you all for coming and leave your forms.
I'm going to my volunteer job. I've been away.